My name is Patrick. I work at Booking.com, but I am here in the context of introducing Shaili Pankaj, who is going to be talking to us about how she empowers teams with data, helping them to make decisions themselves. She started her career in the oil and gas industry, if you would ever believe it, as a mechanical engineer working on platforms in the North Sea. Was also at Get, the taxi company, and has the ambition to grow Doodle's revenue 10x by the end of 2026. We don't know what the start value was, but we know what the end result will be, the outcome. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage.
This music always cracks me up. Hello, everyone. So nice to kind of see everybody's faces. The light's very bright. I feel very energized. It's been such a great conference so far with so many great insights. Hasn't it been great? So I'm Shaili Pankaj. I'm Chief Growth Officer at Doodle. And today I'll be talking to you about unleashing employee potential and supercharging your growth through data. First, a little bit about me. I'm based in Switzerland and I've been at Doodle for 3 years. I have quite a diverse background, as Patrick mentioned, having worked in multiple industries and having lived in 8 countries. In my previous life, I also worked in oil and gas before I made the switch to tech. And I've been in love with growth and product since making the switch. My passion is to build motivated, high-performing teams. So the topic that I'm sharing with you today is very close to my heart. So here's what we'll cover today. In case you don't know what Doodle is, I'll give you a quick introduction. I'll then talk a bit about what companies get wrong in their goal setting and prioritization. Then I'll cover how we do goal setting at Doodle, the challenges, and then finish up with some results and learnings. To give you a bit of an introduction to Doodle, Doodle allows you to schedule without the hassle. You simply set your availability, share a single link with whoever you want to meet with, and then a time can get booked in. Simple and quick. With Doodle, you can schedule meetings without the hassle with clients or candidates or a group, like for a board meeting. And you don't need to go back and forth trying to find a suitable time. So with Doodle, we envision a world where you can really own your time. So what do companies get wrong in their goal setting? I'm an engineer, so I'll illustrate my thinking with a semi-engineering example. Imagine you're 3 people who are trying to move this box, but you can't agree in which direction to move it to. What's the result? You have a workforce making a huge amount of effort, and you get nowhere. In an ideal world, you want to have everybody agree on the direction they want to go in, be fully aligned, and get the maximum impact and move that box. But how do you do that in an organization, on an organizational level? Companies often look like the first box I showed you. They assign different goals to different teams that may not match with each other, which causes a lack of prioritization across the company. People don't really know what goal they're really aiming towards, like on a higher level, and it creates friction between teams as dependencies kind of get ignored or there's friction about them. Even worse, they actually assign tasks to different teams without telling them what goal they're aiming towards. Then you get lack of ownership of the success, and employees don't really get to use their expertise. Why do you hire expert employees if you don't use their expertise to really achieve the goal? And then there's a second problem, that everything is a priority, so nothing gets done. I often tell my team, don't take bites out of many apples when I'm telling them just focus on a few things. Don't try to do everything. You keep eating one bite out of each apple, and then you achieve nothing. So you've made all this effort, and you just can't see the impact. It causes burnout, confusion, demotivation in the workforce. If you set a few most impactful goals, then you achieve one thing at a time, and the teams work on the most impactful things, and there's clarity and empowerment amongst the teams. So let's focus on eating one apple at a time. I often think about, when I think about this lack of prioritization, I think about the famous peanut butter memo by Yahoo's Brad Garlinghouse in 2006. It really captures it well. He sent this memo when he was trying to change the structure and the company culture at Yahoo. So how do we move that box at Doodle in the same direction, or eat one apple at a time, or avoid the peanut butter? You get the drift. I love metaphors. So let's see how goal setting works at Doodle. We want to focus on less and be more impactful. In order to do this, we have a mixture of a top-down and bottom-up approach that creates alignment and ownership within the teams while also giving them direction. Every company has a company vision and mission. That's perhaps 3 to 5 years horizon. This is set by the board and upper management, from which annual company goals are derived. And the annual company goals also are often not understood by the general employees, and they can't really see how they can impact these company goals. So how do you help them achieve the company goals and help them understand how they're making an impact? You define KPIs that will have the most impact on the company goals, and these become the KPIs for success. These generally would have a horizon of being impacted within 6 to 9 months. And this is the top-down part that gives the company direction. You then have a collaborative effort with team leads and individual contributors in order to set objectives that have an impact on these KPIs. And then you give ownership to all the relevant teams to impact these objectives. You don't define those initiatives. This, I've found, has created a culture of trust and transparency and allows teams to use their expertise to achieve their goals. They feel motivated and they feel empowered because they can see what impact they're having. So just to show you a working example of a goal tree, I've put Doodle's goal tree with many things blurred out, just to give an idea of what it can look like. You can see at the top we have the company vision and mission and the company goals. Then we have the KPIs for success. We've then mapped multiple objectives under it, and then the initiatives are down to the teams and can change quite quickly, so we don't tend to map those. Those are managed in another place, which I'll discuss later. So I'll cover 3 steps today. I'm not going to cover how to set a vision and mission or company goals. This is somewhat set, and so my focus here today is how to empower the teams to achieve these. So I'll cover how we define the KPIs for success. Then I'll cover setting the objectives. And then how we help the teams have the ownership on the initiatives and define their own initiatives and prioritize them. So let's look at step 1. I'm going to illustrate this with examples and some numbers, but the numbers are entirely fictional. But I have used Doodle as an example just to make it more visualizable. So Doodle's company vision and mission a world where everyone owns their time. You might set certain company goals under this, annual recurring revenue, for example, rule of 40, employee satisfaction, and already you can see, how can I have an impact on these goals? That's what people would ask, right? So they're quite far removed from what they feel they can impact. For the purposes of this example, I'm going to focus on setting all 3 steps for the annual recurring revenue, which is a typical metric in a subscription business. So for annual recurring revenue, you can break down what are the things that impact the annual recurring revenue. And in this case, I've used the pirate funnel to represent what are the elements that might impact ARR. Any part of the funnel that's impacted would impact ARR to a smaller or greater extent. And then I've mapped some hypothetical numbers. So imagine that you have 10 million visitors to the Doodle site a month. Of those 10 million visitors, 10% of them go on to register as Doodle users. Out of the 1 million who register, half of them create their first meeting or become first-time free organizers. And then of that 500,000 who become first-time free organizers, half of them are still active after 3 months. And I'm keeping it simple and not going into revenue numbers, just to have the thought exercise. So now I'd like to ask you, audience, which of these numbers do you think would have the most impact? Which of the numbers should we choose as a KPI for success to have the most impact on our revenue, let's say, annual recurring revenue? Just shout it out. Retention? Somebody said registration? The person who said registration, why would you say registration?
Because that's the biggest drop and the highest net potential.
Okay. Any other answers? All right. Actually, any of the answers could have been right. I didn't give you enough information. This is very high level. Of course, you'd have to look into more data. But I do agree about the registrations. Something is stopping 50% of users from going from registration to organization when they've actually made the effort to register. In this case, I've also chosen visitors to Doodle site. I'm giving additional information here that the traffic is dropping, and we feel we can really have an impact on increasing that traffic. And then, yes, I've also focused on the registration to activation. So then I map these 2 as my KPIs for success. Then we get to step 2. This is a collaborative effort with individual contributors such as product managers and team leads to set. And you can actually set multiple objectives under each KPI, depending on the complexity and what you think you can impact. So in this case, we said, I want to increase the traffic to the Doodle site. That's the awareness part. And I set a key result under it, which is increasing number of new relevant visitors to Doodle, which is what, looking at the data, we feel will have the most impact. And then under the activation metric, we have set 2, because we feel that the onboarding flow could be improved and the homepage empty state, and set relevant key results under that. These key results, we generally set them to be a little bit stretched, but achievable. And you should be able to monitor them on a frequent basis. So the data team is often recruited to set up a way, like a dashboard or something, that we can monitor all the key results on a regular basis. Then we get to, actually, one thing I forgot to say, be careful on the objectives level, because it's easy to define objectives as actions or tasks, but they should be actually directional, not specific tasks. The specific tasks come under that. So this has to be more directional. So then we get to step 3. This is defining the initiatives, and this is the most exciting and also the most complex. This is the motivating part for employees across the company. Using data throughout is the key to creating maximum alignment. So based on the objectives and key results, we start to hypothesize on the most impactful initiatives to achieve these objectives. The ownership is entirely on the teams. Management gives guidance, but the teams are in charge. They are the experts of each part of the relevant part of the process. So as long as they have the data, they understand it, they understand the problem, then we believe that teams can really make the most impact if they're given the ownership. So how do we do this in the practical sense? We first communicate the objectives across the company. Team leads and individual contributors who are already somewhat involved with setting the objectives are now accountable for delivering them. They then work with their teams to create a list of initiatives and hypotheses that's collected in a central company-wide place. We use actually Jira Product Discovery for this, which works really, really well for us. But you need to set up some central system to collect all the hypotheses, because you actually need to prioritize each hypothesis against the other. And then you prioritize initiatives using a company-wide business value calculator. So we also create a business value calculator that helps everybody estimate the impact of each of these hypotheses in the same way. We use the ICE methodology at Doodle, but there are so many frameworks, and you should use what's suitable for your business. We then test and validate the highest priority hypotheses. And for this, we use multiple different ways of validation, depending on what's suitable: A/B testing, usability testing, surveys and interviews, and others. Then we have validated whether this hypothesis actually has the impact that we estimated. So we update the prioritization score, and that helps us make a decision on whether we build or bench that feature. This process, if followed correctly, really just creates complete transparency and takes away all opinions and prioritizing who shouts the loudest, which I've sometimes seen in some organizations. Basically, whoever has a gut feel or shouts the loudest gets their work done. Here, it's purely based on the information that you see in front of you. So everybody feels that they have a say, and they feel motivated because they can see what impact they're having directly. So I like to think of our data process as a kind of cyclical process where we analyze to identify the biggest problems to solve. We then hypothesize on the solutions and prioritize these hypotheses. We also use data to test and validate and reprioritize the hypotheses and make a decision on build or bench. And then we use these learnings to go back to the analysis stage and iterate. So now we've covered how we ensure alignment with mission, vision, and company goals. Setting this process up is challenging. It takes a little bit of time. Firstly, because you need all the structures in place. You need a place to store the hypotheses. You need a place, you need a business value calculator, and you need the data structures and the dashboards in place. The bigger challenge is to change the company culture. So you need to bring the whole company on board and create a cultural shift. This is done through quite a lot of training of people and a lot of support from management and mentorship so that people understand the process and they are happy to take that leap of faith. But then once this muscle is set up, you really reap the rewards. You have a motivated workforce who are empowered to make decisions and move the company in a common direction. In terms of reevaluating, once you have this set up, reevaluating takes a couple of days every few months. At Doodle, we do it roughly every 3 months. And we maybe change out one KPI. Each KPI itself stays on the goal tree for 6 to 9 months, but we might be changing out one of the KPIs every 3 months as we're making impact on it, and it's no longer the highest impact KPI that we need to have there. So yeah, 3 months is a good frequency for us. Again, different frequency might work for you. There are, of course, challenges to this approach. So first one is a bit slow. It skipped a slide. Okay, no worries. I'm going to go to section 4 anyway. So the first one is that we need a data structure that everybody trusts, understands, and has access to. The second one is that we need buy-in from the whole company, and we need to manage that cultural shift. Then the third one is that we need to balance speed with accuracy. So you need to build the culture of being able to estimate. Is it possible to move to the next slide, please? The one previous. Next, 2. There's one slide missing, maybe. Okay, somehow there's one slide missing. No worries. So you need to balance speed with accuracy. So hypotheses are prioritized based on estimations often. And what I've found is that people are very hesitant to make estimations. So you need to train them to make an estimation based on the data that they have. And we cannot wait for full data to be available. Otherwise, you're going to be waiting forever and you're going to get left behind. And then the fourth problem is that this methodology makes it easier to quantify existing product features and flows. So you need to ensure that there's a balance between improvement of current features and new innovations. But if you keep the focus on these challenges, then they're totally manageable. And the empowerment that people get makes it totally worth it. So I've been talking about data, so I want to share with you a little bit of what impact we had. We got an 8% increase in employee engagement score, a 25% decrease in cycle time, and one of the metrics that we had in the beginning was conversion rate, and we got a 400% increase in subscription conversion rate. Pretty impressive. So, lessons learned. Creating company-wide goals creates cohesion and speed. Using data increases transparency and cross-team collaboration. And giving employees the ownership to drive results increases their motivation and engagement. And in the end, everybody moves in the same direction. Thank you. I'll be happy to take questions.
Shaili, great stuff. That was interesting. Thank you very much. Let me see any hands. If you have a hand, put it up. No, if you have a question, especially. One thing that strikes me is that requires your teams to be very agile, right? Ready to adjust and so forth. How do you make sure that that happens?
100%. So as management, we do actually have quite a good view on our Jira product discovery process so that we're constantly looking at the prioritization score and challenging them. And we actually, the most exciting thing for me is when somebody from the company comes to me or comes to the team lead and says, hey, why are we working on X and not Y? I don't understand. Isn't that amazing when people are so engaged that they're asking that question? So, I do it, and I encourage all the team leads to then reevaluate and sit with this person who's challenging to do the calculation. And most of the time, you go back and you're satisfied that you've prioritized correctly. So it does need quite a bit of management and agility in order to manage. Yes.
Lovely. Question here.
Mike here. Thanks a lot for the presentation. I have a question just about Doodle itself and the length of the transformation and additional challenges. So how large is the tech team, and how long did this transformation take?
Good question. We're 80, around just under 80 people in total. The engineering team is, I think, about 40% of the organization. And this transformation, we did it about a year and a half ago. I'd say it took us about 3 or 4 months to kind of get into the groove of it, but it is a constant challenge to especially have new employees or those who are not quite jiving with it to keep up with it. So it is a bit of a constant effort, but I would say the first effort was maybe 3 or 4 months. It didn't take too long, but we're also not a big organization.